been the mayor of the town of Occoquan since July 1st of last year. Ernie also chairs Occoquan's Virginia 2007 Commemoration Committee and serves Historic Occoquan, Inc. both as a board member and volunteer curator of the Mill House Museum. You can ask him about that after the board. Mr. Porter received his Bachelor's of Science degree from the Georgetown University School of Foreign Service, where he also holds a certificate in Arab Studies. He holds a law degree from Georgetown University Law Center. He's an associate member of the Virginia State Bar and a certified financial planner professional. He's a member of various civic groups, including the Pennsylvania Committee 100 and the Sea Scout Ship 7916. We'll have to ask him about that later too. Mr. Porter is currently pursuing a graduate degree in history and has had his research published in the journal Terra Incognita. But not incognito tonight, Ernie Porter, our moderator for our program tonight.
Thank you. Is everyone here on this microphone? Okay, we're going to do things a little differently than we did last time. We're going to leave this microphone up here for the candidates. I'm going to take this one with me, and after I ask questions, step down so I'm out of the way here. Let me welcome all of you to the candidates forum tonight. We have two contested races tonight. The first one that we're going to be hearing about is the state delegate race for the 52nd district, and then later we're going to be hearing from candidates for the Woodbridge district supervisor. I'm going to start by explaining the rules and guidelines for the forum tonight. First, with regard to applause, we're asking that audience members refrain from applauding except when the candidates are introduced at the start this evening. In other words, while they're answering questions or after they're answering questions, we'd like you to hold your applause and wait until the end of the evening. So when we first introduce them, go ahead and applaud, and then let's wait until the forum is over. Out of respect for the speakers, we ask that everybody turn off their cell phones and pagers, or at least put them on vibrate so there is no sound. That means, yes, that means you in the last forum. Each segment tonight is going to last about 55 minutes and we'll have a 5-minute break between the debates. We have two committee of 100 members up front here who are going to be keeping our speaker time limits. Our timekeepers are going to hold up signs signaling 2 minutes left, 1 minute left, and stop. And for the candidates who are out there, we're going to ask to come up in a minute. So remember that. You're going to get 2 minutes, 1 minute, and stop. After the stop sign appears, the candidates can conclude whatever their current sentence is, but I'm supposed to rigidly enforce the time limits. We'll see exactly how I'm supposed to rigorously enforce those time limits. But what I'll ask you to do is just finish up your sentence when the stop sign goes up. The questions tonight are based on audience questions as well as questions that came in via our website. The questions committee has selected questions that they deem are the best topics, drawing the most interest, and we'll get through as many questions as we can before the time limit is up. I want to quickly thank the questions committee members, Jim Young, Brianna Altman, Bruce Smith, Betty Varner, Jane Byer, Trish Redmond, Jack Kamujian, and Carlos Castro. Those are the members of our questions committee. Why don't we give them a hand? Why don't I go ahead and ask the 52nd district candidates to come up now and take your seats, and then I'll just go through some brief additional rules quickly.
Folks, this microphone does work better, doesn't it? Well, that's better anyway. They'll get to hear you. We're going to go alphabetically, if it's all right with the candidates. Okay?
That's the way we'll start. So the order of the speakers tonight is going to be Mr. Brown first, and then Delegate Frederick. We've dispensed with biographies up here at the podium. The candidates certainly have the literature that you can look at, certainly here and on their website. There's also, I believe, there are also packets of biographical information at the tables up front here if anyone is interested in that. But in the interest of time, we're going to dispense with those as part of the forum. We will alternate who responds in the questions. Each candidate will give an opening statement of 3 minutes, and then each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. After both candidates have responded to the question, the candidates will be each permitted a 1-minute rebuttal. There are no counter rebuttals. So it's going to be a question that you'll get 2 minutes to respond to, your opponent will get 2 minutes to respond to, and then you'll each get an additional minute as a rebuttal. At the conclusion of the audience questions, each candidate will be permitted 1 minute to pose a question to his or her opponent, who will then have up to 3 minutes to respond. And then each candidate will give a closing statement of 3 minutes. Okay, are there any questions from the candidates? Are they set? Okay, why don't we go ahead and start with the opening statements, and since we're going alphabetically, Mr. Brown will start with you, and I would suggest using this microphone.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge my wife Lisa and our daughter Claire, who are here with me tonight. Our son Robert, who is a student at James Madison University, and our son Chris, who's playing football for his high school in Prince William County this evening. I'm grateful for all of the support that they've given me throughout these last few months. Secondly, I'd like to thank the Committee of 100 for hosting this forum, and to thank all of you for taking such an interest in this race. As many of you know, I began my life in an orphanage. My parents adopted me when I was about 10 months old and gave me a home on Fairfax Street in Dumfries. I've lived on that street my whole life, and my wife Lisa and I are raising our family there today. When my mom and dad couldn't afford to pay for me to go to college, I took my dad's advice. I got a job. I worked part-time in our Prince William County school system to pay my way through school. I got to tell you, it was hard work, but I got her done. I became a CPA. I opened my practice in Dumfries, and I've been told that if you can make a living in your hometown, you can't be too bad of a guy. I worked hard to be standing here before you tonight, but I didn't do it alone. I've had the support of my family, my community, and I believe that when you've been as blessed as I have, that you have to give something back. That's why I served for almost 2 decades in Dumfries as a town council member, a representative to the Northern Virginia Regional Commission, and as our mayor. I want to keep working for Prince William County to preserve the quality of life that I grew up with, and to give to our children that same great opportunity that I had. We've been hearing a lot of electioneer rhetoric over the past few months, but that's something my opponent has a little more practice than I do. But tonight I hope to have a serious discussion, not about electioneer politics, but about what happens after the election. I want to go to Richmond to work for our district. I want to work to relieve our traffic congestion, so we can spend a little less time on the road and more time at home with our families, playing ball with our kids, helping them excel in school. I want to work to provide affordable health care for our children and small businesses. And I want to give our seniors access to in-home care. I want to work to preserve our quality education system by treating our teachers like the professionals that they are. A lot of politicians know how to talk when election time comes around. I know how to work hard, and I'm going to work hard for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you to the Committee 100 for doing this great event. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to my wife for being here, my mother as well. As I run for re-election, I'm honored to have such a broad range of support from Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, and from a bipartisan group of elected officials, including the mayors and town council members of Dumfries and Quantico. The mayor is here tonight, and town council member Brewer is here as well. It's been the greatest honor of my life to be able to serve in the House of Delegates and to represent the citizens of Prince William County for the last 4 years. When I first stood before the people and asked for their votes, I promised to fight for responsible growth, better schools, less traffic, and lower taxes. I've kept my promises, even after I was sworn in both times. I've done what I said I would do, and I've put principle over politics, working closely with fellow Republicans as well as Democrats to break through the political stereotypes, to provide honest, proactive, responsive, and accessible representation, to work to better the lives of those I represent, and I've produced results. Many of the bills I sponsored throughout my 2 terms are now law, including the most significant land use growth development reform passed last year, a law that successfully helped to the construction of 37,000 new homes in Northern Virginia. This year I sponsored legislation to provide impact fee authority to local governments to better manage and control growth and development. I brought home more transportation dollars to my district than any other member of my class or anyone with my seniority in the General Assembly. We've worked to protect you and your family from the power of eminent domain. I've also sponsored Virginia's first ever back-to-school sales tax holiday that many families took advantage of last August and the August before. The year before, I sponsored legislation to eliminate the state sales tax on groceries. My community college transfer grant legislation that became law on July 1st is helping to make four-year college education more affordable. And as Vice Chairman of the Virginia Small Business Commission in 2005, I sponsored legislation to create small business health insurance pooling, which is making quality health care more accessible and affordable to our citizens. And I've worked to clean up the Chesapeake Bay and the Potomac. I've pushed for a comprehensive strategy to address our transportation challenges, including making Northern Virginia a priority in the state budget, and by targeting any new transportation dollars to the areas that need them the most. Instead of simply asking our citizens to pay more while shifting 70% of those funds downstate. And I've worked to make sure that we have the roads and the schools and the public safety in place before residential growth. I've stood firm against taxing Virginians more when we're running billion-dollar surpluses, and I've refused to ask hardworking families to cut their budgets because government won't better spend the money it already has. And the thing I'm most proud of is the bill that I had that increased the number of tests to newborns. Having just had a daughter 12 months ago, that is the most important thing that I think I've been able to do in my time in office. It's not the sexiest thing, but it definitely is something that's made a big difference. It's saving also millions of dollars in healthcare costs to the Commonwealth of Virginia. I've worked hard to be a leader on these and many other issues important to Prince William citizens. I've been a fighter for your priorities, not the Richmond special interest priorities, and I hope to be able to continue that fight in the third term. Thank you.
Okay, the first question is going to Delegate Frederick. This is a shocker. It's on illegal immigration. The question is, what proposals would you introduce to ameliorate the problems caused by illegal immigration? That's 2 minutes to Mr. Frederick.
Immigration, not a new issue for me. Not a new issue for me. It's a huge problem. It's costing taxpayers a fortune. We need to stop providing innumerable taxpayer benefits to those that are not legally present. And I'm also concerned about the almost daily news reports that we're seeing about violent crimes being committed by an illegal alien. I've been at the forefront at the state level to do something meaningful about illegal immigration in our neighborhoods and our communities. I'm not a Johnny-come-lately. Over the last 4 years, I've proposed legislation in Richmond that would do everything from require state police to enforce federal immigration law, to crack down on businesses that hire illegals. A couple of weeks ago, I announced my plans to ensure that Virginia does not provide sanctuary to illegals, and that those cities and towns and counties that do should not be eligible for state funding. Every possible incentive that illegal aliens have to come here, we need to stop. So hopefully that we can reestablish the rule of law, provide taxpayer resources for only citizens and legal residents, not for those who break the law. My mother's here. She's an immigrant. She came from Columbia. She was born and raised there. Most of my family are still there. I know a lot about this issue. I have a very large family. She has 7 siblings. I have 20 plus cousins. Some of them want to come here. They're waiting their turn in line. They're following the rules, and there's no reason why we should expect anyone else to do anything otherwise. But you know, it's interesting because my opponent had a press conference today. 10 points that he wants to introduce on illegal immigration, and I believe that was part of the question, what have I done? It looks like about just about every single one of their 10 points, I've introduced legislation, I've co-sponsored legislation, we've already done it. On one of their, I can go down the list. On their first point, House Bill 2687, on their second, House Bill 487, on their sixth item, House Bill 2623, on their seventh item, House Bill 2448, House Bill 1049, House Bill 1618, 1650, and number 8, number 9. It goes on and on. I've been fighting this battle for many years, ever since I got in the General Assembly. I have the distinction of being the only Latino ever elected to the General Assembly ever. And I've taken that, and I've done everything I can, and we're going to continue that effort. And I'd like to see my opponent, I asked the governor to declare a state of emergency 2 years ago. I asked the governor, I passed legislation out of the House that asked the state police to enforce our immigration laws. I'd like my opponent to join me in asking the governor to do that. That doesn't take a bill. He can do that right away.
I'll treat that as a semicolon in that sentence. I'm going to read the question again for Mr. Brown. What proposals would you introduce to ameliorate the problems caused by illegal immigration? 2 minutes.
Thank you. Well, as you know, our federal government under President Bush has gotten us into a very complicated mess. We have not seen any real solutions at the federal level. that mess has been dumped on the laps of us here in our state. We need to enforce the laws and the books of the Commonwealth. Additionally, we need to address these matters in this 10-point press release that we put out recently. And I believe that we need to make our focus as follows. Firstly, we need to fine employers who knowingly hire illegal immigrants up to $10,000 per illegal employee. We need to get out in front of this issue, not be behind the scenes. Second, we need to give employers the tools that they need to be able to verify legal status of employees. Thirdly, we need to make a federal conviction of hiring illegal employees a reason to suspend business licenses of Virginia businesses who would hire illegal people. And thirdly, we need to allow employment officials to work with the Virginia Employment Commission to verify employment status of their employees. Now, it's very clear to me that we have to take a very strong stand in this matter. We have to be out in front of it. We need to send a strong message that we're not going to break the law in Virginia for a quick buck as businesses. We're not going to hire illegal people to make up the profit. That's how we stop it. We get out in front.
1 minute rebuttal.
1 minute rebuttal.
You know, I don't disagree at all with anything my opponent has said. But those are all things that I've been working on for years. I don't disagree that the president's dropped the ball. The president's done a lousy job on immigration. And so has the Congress, by the way. And there was a big bill this year that was going to give amnesty to illegals, and that was a Democratic Congress. So I think this isn't a partisan issue. I think Republicans and Democrats on both sides feel very strongly about this. I think Republicans and Democrats want to do something about the problem, want to change, make some good changes in our communities, and the federal government's dropped the ball. So, you know, illegal immigration really comes down to the services and the money that's being spent by the taxpayers. It's being borne mostly by the local level, but also by the state level. But the feds, the cost that they're not paying to enforce our immigration laws, to enforce our border regulations, to close the border, it's coming down, it's filtering all down to the local level, and it's a big, big problem.
Mr. Brown, 1 minute.
Well, as you can see, there's a very different view here. My opponent would create levels of bureaucracy that would be difficult to manage. He would propose that we would see Richmond not send our tax dollars back to communities. We in the communities who pay our taxes, the majority of us are legal citizens, legal residents. We would likely be hurt the most by his idea. My thinking is that the approach to take is to get out in front, to stop it at the demands.
Okay, our second question, which will go to Mr. Brown. Prince William County taxpayers are paying $5.5 million for a fiber optic network, so the local government has reliable broadband connection to the internet. What about the residents and businesses who desperately need the same? What are we supposed to do? How can you help? Mr. Brown, 2 minutes.
We need to work harder in Richmond to encourage delivery of services to communities. We've seen our communities grow and grow rapidly. We need to be, again, out in front of this matter. We need to be pushing hard for state involvement in solving this problem. I believe that we have to look at this from the perspective of the consumer. Many of us here have long wanted those services to be delivered to our neighborhoods, and we find it difficult to get them. We wait, we wait, we wait. We need to encourage our legislators to push this matter to bring these services to our communities.
Mr. Frederick, I'll read the question quickly again. Prince William County taxpayers are paying $5.5 million for a fiber optic network so the local government has reliable broadband connection to the internet. What about the residents and businesses who desperately need the same? What are we supposed to do? How can you help? 2 minutes.
Well, you know, I don't think necessarily the government has a solution to every problem. You know, the internet is something that has grown to be something bigger than we all would have ever guessed 20 years ago. And that's not because the government got involved. Sure, the government invested the time and the resources for research to get the technology in place, but it's the private sector that really made this go. And so what I think we need to do is we need to have a business climate in Virginia. We need to have a business climate in our communities, in our counties, in our towns, in our cities, so that we're encouraging businesses to come in and make those investments to do those things. Let me get back to the last question real quick. Levels of bureaucracy in trying to make sure that our county, cities, and towns don't provide sanctuary to illegal aliens. I don't think that's bureaucracy. I think that's basically telling them, you know, back when the Congress wanted all the states to change their drinking age to 21, they went off and they said, we're not going to require that the states change their drinking age to 21. What we're going to do is we're going to say, you're not going to get any federal highway dollars if you don't do it. So this is a very similar approach that what we're taking. It's to incentivize localities to do the right thing, to stop encouraging illegal aliens to come to their communities. Arlington provides sanctuary to illegal aliens. They provide housing subsidies, among other things. So, you know, we really need to get on this stuff. And sanctuary is a good way to do it.
Let me just ask the timekeepers quickly. 2 minutes or 1 minute? Yeah, it's supposed to be 1 minute rebuttal. Was that 1 or 2? Okay, all right, good. And Mr. Brown, you have 1 more minute with us.
Well, as you know, the question wasn't about illegal immigration. It was about internet services for our communities. And again, we need to be on target with that. Government can step up and represent people. That's what government does. That's its role. We need to be able to, again, push for more proactive deliveries of services in communities like our own.
Okay, our next question is on transportation. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize. I thought that was your... Yeah, I thought so. No, here's what happened. I think it seemed to me that maybe Jeff's rebuttal was a little longer than a minute. It looked like there was some confusion there, and so that's why. Okay, so that's why we had some confusion. So you got a little extra time there. Okay. The next question is on transportation. Is transportation such an important priority that should be allowed to compete for general funds, i.e. income and sales tax proceeds, and not be limited to gasoline and other dedicated taxes? Mr. Brown, this is yours. 2 minutes.
Well, as you know, transportation is the #1 issue that we face every day in the 52nd District. We've seen a transportation bill evolve this year that was pretty much an election year compromise, but did some good things. It was fundamentally flawed. It has, as a funding component, the user fees. This form of tax was brought to us as a fix to raise revenue to help solve our problems. And I got to tell you, that doesn't get it done. This abuser fee idea is flawed. What I think we should be doing is looking for proactive ways to solve our problems with transportation. That we need to prioritize at the state level to set a targeted, dedicated stream of revenue to be able to be used for transportation matters. I believe that we ought to work hard to eliminate the abuser fees. Those abuser fees were proposed by my opponent. He proposed those abuser fees in 2005. He voted for them again. Check it out. You have the information to share with you. Now, when we want to make some real solutions happen in transportation, we'll look harder in Virginia to be able to dedicate shift revenues to solve our transportation problems.
Okay, I'll read the question again for Mr. Frederick. Is transportation such an important priority that should be allowed to compete for general funds, i.e. income and sales tax proceeds, and not be limited to gasoline and other dedicated taxes? This is 2 minutes. I will also, incidentally, give the speakers, the candidates, the option, if you'd like to have the microphone where you're seated, that's fine as well.
Well, I'll answer the question since my opponent didn't. General funds, I believe, are for general government purposes, the things the government should be doing. I believe that there is no, probably aside from education and public safety, there's no other legitimate action of government something legitimate for government to be involved in than transportation. So I think that general fund dollars should be used for transportation. It's the people's money. They want their money used for transportation. They want their money better prioritized, and so we should do it. Particularly when we have a transportation trust fund that has no trust in it. It was, over the last decade, it's been rated over $1 billion. So what's the point of having a special fund when it keeps getting rated? And my opponent says I proposed abuser fees. I never proposed abuser fees. You can see who sponsored the legislation. It was either Alvo or Rust. I didn't do that. I might have co-sponsored some form of abuser fees in the past, but the fact of the matter is that the abuser fees that are enacted, that are law now in the Commonwealth of Virginia, I voted against. And he keeps wanting to say that the abuser fees that people are now dealing with, I voted for. I didn't. I voted against it. And he wants to criticize me for voting against the transportation bill, but he wants to also say that I voted for it. I don't know how that works. But the fact of the matter is, if we're going to go out and we're going to hold accountable those that are putting lives in danger on our roads, those are the worst drivers, then I'm all for it. They need to pay up. But regular drivers do not. And everybody needs to apply, not just Virginia citizens. And I voted against the bill that did that. Past abuser fee bills, they applied to everybody. They only applied to the worst of the worst. And sure, I'm going to support cracking down on bad drivers. I'm not going to support raising money for transportation on the backs of